everybody. This one is called Do It Yourself, Selective Service and the Draft, and How Not to Volunteer number 2. I've added in some material that I've discovered, in the last few months. And so there's, and this stuff that I got is like bulletproof. And so it will help people to not register if they don't want to. If you want to register, knock yourself out. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. This last paragraph is for all the Satanist order follower revenue officers operating in their private capacity under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966, because I prefer gold or silver coin, and I only accept the IOUs because I have to. Not because I want them, because I have to. And so anyways, the bottom line is that war is a scam, okay? All wars are nothing more than a giant commercial transaction. They're actually bankster wars. This is the best way to phrase it. It's a bankster war. Watch All Commerce is Warfare and All Warfare is Commerce video. ISIS is a creation of the CIA, and the CIA is run by the Roman cult. Watch my CIA equals Roman cult video. The war on terror is a war on you. Watch my video. False flag operations are everywhere. World War III is being orchestrated as part of the orchestrated subprime crisis. Watch the Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3. The banksters orchestrated the subprime crisis so they could put the government deep into debt and justify making wars to help pay it off. And how do they do that? Well, we're going to talk about that right now. All wars are really a satanic blood sacrifice. All birth certificates create an estate under the Hague Convention concerning the international administration of deceased persons. Then upon the death of somebody in a war, the government seizes the account and uses it to pay the national debt under international law. And that's exactly what happens, folks. And so when you go over there, they want to reduce the population. They want to get a bunch of people killed. And so that's exactly what they're doing. And it's all in support of the Roman cult, too. The Roman cult wants to reduce the population. There's a whole bunch of people that call us useless eaters, and they're all trying to get this World War III going. There's no law that says that anybody has to register for the Selective Service, and PIG is an acronym, stands for Persons in Government Who Intend to Perjure Their Oath, and there will be no law that says that anybody has to be drafted. This procedure takes away their plausible deniability. If you do not assert your rights, you lose them. If you do not want to participate, you don't have to leave the country. In the Vietnam War, there's all sorts of people that went to Canada to avoid the draft. They were called draft dodgers. And they don't have to leave. You can be there right in their face, and there's nothing they can do about it. And a friend of mine did. Okay, during the Vietnam War, he was right here, right in their face, and there was nothing they did about it. They didn't even try. The Selective Service is for U.S. citizens or registered aliens. The draft will only be for U.S. citizens or registered aliens. If you want to know what a U.S. citizen is, watch my video. Citizenship. Do you know who you are? If you're forced to register because of a driver's license or student loan or one of these things, registering to vote, there are still alternatives. And I gotta say that if a foreign enemy ever comes to our shores, I'll be the first one in line. But we have no duty to go to a foreign country to participate in the satanic blood sacrifice bankster war. If you want to join the military and go to war, knock yourself out. I wish you the best of luck. Good luck with that. My son wants to join the SEALs, and he knows how I think about this. But, it's a free country. I can't stop him. And so I just hope he doesn't come back in a pine box. This video is directed at those who are getting railroaded into it and do not want to participate. the post-traumatic stress disorders, not necessary. If you go over there and get that, you asked for it. If getting your arms, legs, hands blown off is not necessary, if you go over there and that happens to you, you asked for it. People that joined the military volunteered. And this video is to show you how not to volunteer. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to click the bell button next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. And there's the front page of my channel. There's the arrow pointing at the bell. You click on the bell. A pop-up will come up with a little checkbox. You got to check it and click OK, and that'll make sure you get notified when there's a new upload. This is the old Selective Service registration form. That's the front, that's the back, or that's the outside, and this is the inside, depending on how you want to look at it. Anyways, the reason I'm showing you this is because this actually has a better definition of U.S. citizen, and they, in my opinion, pulled it out of service because they didn't want people figuring that out. Anyways, and so we're going to go through this yes column right here, and the no column, who cares? But it says, with few exceptions, all male U.S. citizens and male immigrant aliens residing in the U.S. and its territories must register if they're 18 through 25. And so we go through all of that on there, and it shows you what we're going to do. I got it all in another slide here. The text is easy to read, so we'll go through those. And then at the bottom, in the yellow highlighting, it says residents of Puerto Rico, Guam, America, Virgin Islands, and Northern Mariana Islands are U.S. citizens. Okay, so again, that's all it is. Okay, that's what I got right there. And we're going to go through that right now. So who must register? All U.S. citizens born after December 31st, 1959 who are 18 but not yet 26 years old, except as noted below. Cadets at the Merchant Marine Academy, National Guardsmen and reservists not on active duty, delayed entry program enlistees, Reserve Officer Training Corps students, separatees from the active military service, separated for any reason before age 26, men rejected for enlistment for any reason before age 26, Civil Air Patrol members, permanent resident aliens, special seasonal agricultural workers, refugee, parolee, and asylee aliens, undocumented illegal aliens, dual national U.S. citizens, handicapped physically or mentally able to function in public with or without assistance. You know, I don't know why they put those in there, but yeah, anyways, whatever. And then at the bottom, residents of Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands, and Northern Mariana Islands are U.S. citizens. Okay, so under the old form, that was all that was required, really. And they must have figured that out, so they went and took that down, and they published this new form that we're going to talk about right now. This is the outside, and this is the inside, and it's a lot more brief and to the point. And they kind of conveniently forget to put some stuff in there. And number 3 here is the one that we want to talk about, and that's very brief, much more brief than the other one. It says male U.S. citizens and immigrants, documented and undocumented, residing in the U.S. and its territories must register at their age 18 through 25. So they don't care if you're undocumented for the draft. Anyways, another little diversion here, announcing a subscription-based YouTube channel called Sovereignty International. The recommended cost of the subscription is currently $1.99 a month because it avoids the advertising only. That's the only thing that I can guarantee, or did guarantee, when I first started the channel. I'm starting to put some exclusive material on there. I've got an Arlington private information share that's exclusive. Everything that goes in the regular channel goes up there, but in addition to that, there'll be exclusive material. There's also a video on how to make powerful affidavits, and there's also I've got started making videos about where we go through some of these documents and explain in detail some of the contents, where there'll be someone on the other side asking me questions, wanting to know things. And so that gives people an opportunity to see what kind of questions people are asking, and how to fill these forms out, or how to complete them, and all the rest of it. So I've got one video like that up there too, and I'm got some more coming. There is going to be exclusive content, but most of my stuff, you know, my objective here is, because the only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through their fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit. And so for that reason, there's not much that I want to put on there exclusively. I'm currently publishing 3 videos a week. It says 5 there, but it's actually 3. And so there's going to be exclusive material on there, but it's not going to be that much. And because most of the stuff I want to have for everybody. The important thing to understand is if you want to make a donation too, I mean, it's certainly a nice, convenient way to make a donation. It's not very expensive. And you know, every donation is appreciated, and $1.99 coming from a lot of different people adds up really fast. And so if I was getting $1.99 from every subscriber on my regular channel, I'd be rolling in the dough. But so I can't expect that, but you know, every little bit helps, and it's certainly appreciated. Anyways, and also some people had a trouble finding the channel, and so a link is at the bottom of the channel, bottom of this slide, I should say, and also on this slide I put it's at the top. The top red arrow is pointing to the link so that you can find it. And also somebody sent me a $1.99 donation. At least I'm guessing it was a donation. I sent them an email, asked them if they wanted me to subscribe them, because I have no way to subscribe anybody. I have no control over subscribers at all. I can't even see all the subscribers. And so the only way you can subscribe is click on that start free trial button, and YouTube is going to want some payment information. Who knows what they'll want? I have no idea. And but that's the only way that you can subscribe. And so I have no control over subscribers. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. So what is a U.S. citizen? The term individual means a citizen of the United States or an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence. And that's found at Title V, United States Code, Section 552AA2. Well, paragraph 13 of the same section says the term federal personnel means officers and employees of the government of the United States, members of the uniformed services, including members of the reserve components, individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government of the United States, including survivor benefits. And so what they're essentially saying is anybody with a Social Security number is federal personnel. And actually, and that's the topic of another discussion that I've had in my YouTube videos all over the place, is that a Social Security number is a number for a Cestgate trust. And so if you are a living man, then you don't have a Social Security number. I went to the Supreme Court with that argument in my first case, and it was never any problem. And in fact, this is a letter from the Social Security Administration. And I guess some guy wanted to get a Social Security number, but he wasn't receiving federal aid or government assistance of any kind. And so therefore, he's not required to have a Social Security number, is what they said. Okay, we cannot give you a Social Security card because you're not receiving federal aid or government assistance of any kind. And so the point is that unless you want some government benefits, then you don't want that stuff. And in fact, I don't even want their government benefits. They can put them up their rectal orifice for all I care. Anyways, now we're going to go into a little stuff about statute writing, because that's important, because we're going to talk about some statutes. Actually, some codes that are taken from statutes, but that's, you know, not the topic of the discussion today. Include, or the participial form thereof, is defined to comprise within, to hold, to contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. That's U.S. Supreme Court, Montebello Salt versus Utah. American Dictionary of English Language, Noah Webster, 1828. Include, to confine within, to hold, to contain, is the shell of a nut, includes the kernel. A pearl is included in a shell, but in these senses we more commonly use enclose. To comprise, or to comprehend, to contain. And so, again, it's limiting. The point is that the word include is limiting. Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. Include, to confine within, to hold as an enclosure, take in, attain, shut up, contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. And they cite an Oregon court case. The point is that include is limiting. And most people don't understand that, and these liars that write up these statutes do everything they can to get you all confused, and so that you think that you're one of the slaves. And there's another, this is a maxim of law called ejusdem generis. It's a canon of construction that when a general word or phrase follows a list of specifics, the general word or phrase will be interpreted to include only those items of the same type as those listed. For example, in the phrase horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, goats, or any other farm animal, the general language or any other farm animal, despite its seeming breadth, would probably be held to include only four-legged hoofed mammals typically found on farms, thus would exclude chickens. And so that's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. And so, again, we have to keep this in mind when we're reading these statutes. Now, here's a perfect example. Okay, so we'll read it from include is there. Okay, so include is limiting. So then it says the word person and whoever include corporations, companies, associations, firms, partnerships, societies, and joint stock companies, as well as individuals. Okay, so then an individual under Title I, United States Code, which is, by the way, positive law, and under Title I, United States Code, an individual, or the word include is limiting, and so there's nothing there that's not specifically written, okay? And that's include, okay? Now, ejusdem generis says that because you have a list of fictitious entities, that an individual is also a fictitious entity, okay? So an individual is actually a Satanic trust is what it is. But now this is Title 26, United States Code, Section 7701. When used in this title, where not otherwise distinctly expressed or manifestly incompatible with the intent thereof. See, these liars lay awake at night coming up with all of this garbage they can put in there to get people confused. And so really what it says is we're using this title, person, the term person shall be construed to mean and include, okay, an individual, trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. And so person, mean and include, see, that basically means the same thing, okay? So it's saying mean and mean, or include. That's what these liars do. It's basically mean and include is saying the same thing twice. But what some people who are ignorant will sit there and think, oh yeah, well that's me, and it's not. Okay, it's actually more fictitious entities: an individual, a trust, a state, partnership, association, company, or corporation. So first of all, include is limiting. So there's nobody else there that's not listed. That it means, and it's also because of ejusdem generis, there's a list of fictitious entities, so an individual is also a fictitious entity, okay? So an individual, a trust, they're basically saying the same thing twice, okay? Individual is a trust, once you understand what's going on. They're Satanists, okay? This is deliberately deceptive. That's what it's intended to be. Ex parte Frank Knowles, by metaphysical refinement in examining the form of our government, it might be correctly said that there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. This is chapter, what's that? Looks like 61. No, 71. An act prescribing the form, enacting, and resolving clauses of acts and resolutions of Congress and rules of construction, therefore, which was approved on February 25th, 1871 in Volume 16, 41st Congress, Session 2, under Section 2 at 16 Stat 431, says, and be it further enacted, and in all acts hereinafter passed, the word person may extend and be applied to bodies politic and corporate. Okay, so a person is a fictitious entity. Every taxpayer is a Satanic trust having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's Henry Boland's 1912. The Congressional Record, 5 pages, a summary of 5 pages of the Congressional Record dated June 13, 1967, says, A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the Public Charitable Trust, the Constructive Cestui Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. And so, a person, okay, see, this is what we're talking about back here is U.S. citizens, and a U.S. citizen's a person. A person is a variety of entities other than human beings. That's Church of Scientology versus U.S. Department of Justice. A person's foreigners, not citizens. That's U.S. versus otherson. A person, the term may include labor organizations, partnerships, associations, corporations, legal representatives, trustees in bankruptcy or receivers. Scope and delineation of the term is necessary for determining those to whom the 14th Amendment of the Constitution affords protection, since this amendment expressly applies to person. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. Okay? Fictitious entities. In common usage, the term person does not include the sovereign, and statutes employing the word are normally construed to exclude it. A sovereign is not a person in a legal sense. Okay, so the first case was Will versus Michigan State Police, U.S. Supreme Court, and the second case was Fox versus U.S. Supreme Court. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profiles, I've got two of them, Sovereign Living and Sovereignty International. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group called Sovereignty International at Facebook is being deleted. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off your group, and I'm not going to let Facebook profit off of my hard work. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Twitter at EngineerWin. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. Colgate versus Harvey, U.S. Supreme Court. What they're essentially saying there is that Congress criminally converted citizenship into the opposite of the Founding Fathers. Okay? That's exactly what they're saying. Okay? And that's confirmed by U.S. versus Rhodes. The amendment reversed and annulled the original policy of the Constitution. But it doesn't apply. Actually, they didn't. Okay? It only applies to certain people. And the original people, the state citizens, it doesn't mean a hill of beans to. And actually, I have a video called the so-called 14th Amendment is unconstitutional, and it is, because it's not an amendment. It's a revision. It changes all sorts of things in the Constitution. That's a revision. That's not an amendment. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. There's a clear distinction between national citizenship and state citizenship. The Privileges and Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment protect very few rights because it neither incorporates the Bill of Rights nor protects all rights of individual citizens. Instead, this provision protects only those rights peculiarly being a citizen of the federal government. It does not protect those rights which relate to state citizenship. There is in our political system a government of each of the several states and a government of the United States. Each is distinct from the other and has citizens of its own. It's U.S. Supreme Court, U.S. versus Cruikshank. A person who is a citizen of the United States is necessarily a citizen of the particular state in which he resides. But a person may be a citizen of a particular state and not a citizen of the United States. To hold otherwise would be to deny to the state the highest exercise of its sovereignty, the right to declare who are its citizens. And that's a Louisiana court case. So you can be a state citizen without being a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen's a slave. One may be a citizen of a state and not a citizen of the United States. McDonald versus State, Indianapolis. That's an Indiana report. Both before and after the 14th Amendment to the federal Constitution, it has not been necessary for a person to be a citizen of the U.S. in order to be a citizen of his state. And that's, again, U.S. That's Cross versus Board of Supervisors, citing U.S. versus Cruikshank that we already talked about, slaughterhouse cases, all sorts of them. Anyways, there's two classes of citizens of the United States and of the state. One may be a citizen of the former without being a citizen of the latter. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of this people and a constituent member of the sovereignty. That's Dred Scott versus Sanford, okay? We're all kings and queens. The state citizens, and if U.S. citizens, the Satanic Trust, so it's a piece of property. The people are sovereign, are not bound by general words and statutes restrictive of prerogative, right, title, or interest unless expressly named. Acts of limitation do not bind the king or the people. The people have been ceded all the rights of the king, the former sovereign. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. People of a state are entitled to all rights which formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. It will be admitted on all hands that with the exception of the powers granted to the states and the federal government through the constitutions, the people of the several states are unconditionally sovereign within their respective states. That's U.S. Supreme Court. The state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks absent contract. Every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He's not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent. The rights of individuals are restricted only to the extent that they've been voluntarily surrendered by citizenship to the agencies of government. Did you get into a satanic contract, or did you give up your God-given rights to get some satanic privileges? State citizens are the only ones living under free government whose rights are incapable of impairment by legislation or judicial decision. Now let me say that again. State citizens are the only ones living under free government whose rights are incapable of impairment by legislation or judicial decision. And that's Twining versus New Jersey, U.S. Supreme Court. State citizenship is a vested substantial property right, and the state has no power to divest or impair these rights. Taxpayers are not state citizens. The sovereignty of a state does not reside in the persons who fill the different departments of its government, but in the people, from whom the government emanated, and they may change it at their discretion. Sovereignty then in this country abides with the constituency and not with the agent, and this remark is true both in reference to the federal and state government. No action can be taken against a sovereign in the non-constitutional courts of either the United States or the state courts, and any such action is considered a crime of barratry. Barratry is an offense at common law. And now another little diversion. And it's a good thing it come by because I was starting to get worked up here a little bit. CubeYard.com. For great custom websites, domain names, and hostings, go to CubeYard.com. Use coupon code CY172 for 20% off your first order. CubeYard.com, your source for websites, domain names, and hosting. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. That's Maxwell versus Dow, U.S. Supreme Court. A U.S. citizen has no rights. The only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. A U.S. citizen has no rights. They are slaves. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia and through their plenary power. That's military dictatorship, folks. nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company, the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. So the point being is that U.S. citizens do not get an Article 3 core. There's actually a lot of cases that talk about this. And the boundaries of the District of Columbia expand as necessary. If the U.S. citizens in Arizona, he's in the District of Columbia. If the U.S. citizens in Texas, he's in the District of Columbia for purposes of the courts. And now another little diversion. Check out my other videos. Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Churchianity Series, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1, 2, and 3, Martial Laws here. Do-it-yourself, no income tax. Do-it-yourself, no sales tax. Do-it-yourself, traffic stop. Do-it-yourself, free mail. Do-it-yourself, kangaroo courts 1 through 9. So there's two classes of citizens. For more information, watch my citizenship video or watch my Do You Know Who You Are playlist. Bottom line is that your citizenship is determined by what you tell them, as well as the evidence that you provide. I know people who get called for jury duty and tell them they're not a U.S. citizen, and they're out of there so fast their head will spin. There is a Selective Service bureaucrat in every locality. If you serve him with a notice and demand, which watch my do-it-yourself estoppel certificates video to understand what that is. If you serve him with a notice and demand that brings up these issues, I'll bet you that they never get around to selecting you. And when you bring up the stuff that we're going to talk about right now, I'll bet you that they take you off of their list completely, forever. Matter of fact, you can probably get legislation changed that goes and does stuff like arbitrary selective service registration with the voters registration, that kind of stuff. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword and the other is by debt. And that's John Adams, 1826. The government is bankrupt. See the Bankrupt Corporate Governments videos. And what happens is that when the government goes bankrupt, it's effectively the same thing as a military occupation because it's put under martial law. Okay? And so we're going to talk about a military occupation for the rest of these slides here, or some of them. But it's all effectively the same thing when it goes bankrupt. So I don't care where you're at in America. The bankruptcy certainly applies. But even if you're not in one of the, like, there's a royal proclamation of 1763. Let's get started here first, and then I'll start talking about that. Anyways, see, Texas and the other American states is under a military occupation video. See, the Alberta and other Canadian states is under a military occupation video. This is Article 1 of the Lieber Code. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. And this is Article 2 of the Lieber Code. Martial law does not cease during a hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. When the occupation of a place or territory continues beyond the conclusion of peace as one of the conditions of the same. So the physical presence of the army puts you under martial law, and it doesn't end even though the war ends, unless there's a special proclamation by the Commander-in-Chief in the United States, that's the President of the United States, or it's specially mentioned in the Treaty of Peace. Well, listen to this, folks. There's been no proclamation from the Civil War ending martial law, number one. Number two, in the Civil War, there was no Treaty of Peace either. Okay? Now, where I'm at right now in Arizona, there was a treaty of peace. It's called the Treaty of Hidalgo. But it says nothing about ending martial law. So martial law is still in full force and effect. And then you go beyond that. What about, say, for example, World War II, where all of Europe was invaded at various times. A bunch of Africa was invaded at various times. Japan, the Philippines, most of the world over in Asia was invaded at various times. I have yet to see a proclamation ending martial law. I have yet to see anything mentioned in any treaty about ending the martial law. And so, I mean, the whole planet is under martial law rule. Think about it. So, I mean, really, the whole planet is under martial law rule. It's under a military occupation. Well, so now we're dealing right now with, so if you're in any country on the planet, I mean, I don't know the history of every country on the planet, but I'll bet you can come up with this, okay? I'll bet you can come up with this. So anyways, let's go to the next, continue on here. This is the Law and Customs of War on Land, Hague Convention 4, Article 42. Territory is considered occupied when it's actually placed under the authority of the hostile army. The occupation extends only to territory where such authority has been established and can be exercised. And this is the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. And this says the present convention shall apply from the outset of any conflict or occupation mentioned in Article 2. I don't have Article 2 here, but it covers everywhere. In the territory of the parties to the conflict, the application of the present convention shall cease on the general close of military operations. Okay, so theoretically, the territories of the application of the present convention shall cease on the general close of military operations, which is all well and fine. In the case of occupied territory, the application of the present convention shall cease 1 year after the general close of military operations. However, the occupying power shall be bound for the duration of the occupation to the extent that such power exercises the functions of government in such territory by the following articles of the present convention. And there's a whole bunch of articles that continue on forever as long as there's a military occupation. And, well, think about it. The Civil War ended in 1868 or 1865, and but there was no treaty of peace, so that military occupation still continues to this day, 150 years later. And better yet, the Spanish-American War, the military occupation that happened because of that, continues to this day, 160 years later or more. And there's probably places on this planet that a military occupation is 1,000 years. The occupying power may not compel protected persons. This is Article 51. Okay, so let's go back here real quick. We're only going to talk about Article 51 and 52. There's a bunch of other really good stuff in there, and I mention it in some of my other videos. I recommend that if you're going to use this stuff to get familiar with this, because it's good material. It's available on my private group at Yahoo in the files directory. Anyways, Article 51. The occupying power may not compel protected persons to serve in its armed or auxiliary forces. No pressure or propaganda which aims at securing voluntary enlistment is permitted. And so, what do you think that Selective Service registration form is all about? That's exactly what it is. Or going and assaulting you to get a driver's license, so then they can register you. Okay, all of that's unconstitutional. Okay, United States has acceded to this convention. They're the ones that was behind it, quite frankly. And so this is definitely applicable. This is why the Selective Service registration form only describes people in the District of Columbia and the territories. And actually, if you think about it, the territories, when the United States, at the time of the Constitution, none of the territories existed. You know, Guam, American Samoa, and Puerto Rico, they weren't part of the United States. And so they're all under military occupation. Think about it. So none of it applies. But also, you can do it under Article 52. No contract, agreement, or regulation shall impair the right of any worker, whether voluntary or not, wherever he may be, to apply to the representatives of the protecting power in order to request the said power's intervention. All measures at creating unemployment or at restricting the opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to induce them to work for the occupying power are prohibited. Well, think about it. What's conscription? They want you to come work for them. They want you to, and you can use this to when they're compelling Social Security numbers, because Social Security numbers are for government employees. I mean, it just gets better. Anyways, yeah, this is great stuff. This is like, you go to any court and they are going to be diving for cover. They won't want it in court, okay? I guarantee you. All you'd have to do would be to serve them with a registered letter, and I'm planning on serving them with a registered letter. In Arizona, when you get a driver's license, they have a little block there about registering for Selective Service, and I'm gonna send them a registered letter. I'll bet you that'll get removed. Some states have things when you register to vote, you get to register for Selective Service. I'm gonna do everything I can, and we all need to start doing that in every state, because that's a bunch of garbage. So what do? Well, what you do is you serve a registered letter on whoever's the head of the agency that's registering for the local Selective Service or draft, and or the Attorney General. I would do the Attorney General too. Matter of fact, if they didn't run and hide after, in other words, send you a letter saying, sorry, we removed you, okay? If they didn't beg for forgiveness, then I'd file a criminal complaint against them is what I would do, and I'll bet you get them removed. Anyways, use the citations in this presentation and explain that you're under a military occupation and they have no right to compel you to go into the military, and how it's a violation of Article 1 of the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. And if you can't find work, do that to produce or do not want to produce a Social Security number, you can use the same argument. Okay, a Social Security number is for government employees. So, say hypothetical situation that you do get selected, okay? Well, all is not lost, okay? It's really not, okay? And so never, ever, ever give up, okay? I have a friend of mine, we'll call him Bill. He was in the ROTC during the Vietnam War. And he, in other words, he got his college paid for by the military. And part of the deal with that is after it's all done, you're supposed to go and sign up and be an officer in the military. And so after he graduated from university, they had these, in the ROTC, they had they invite everybody down and have coffee and donuts and all this stuff. And they had a bunch of contracts there and everybody was signing up. And he went down there, he was telling me about this. He said he went down there, he had their coffee and their donuts and sat around and shot the breeze with everybody, and then he left. And then a couple of weeks later, he gets another invitation to come down for the coffee and donuts. So he goes down and he sits around and shoots the breeze with everybody and has their coffee and donuts, and then he left. And after a while, they quit sending him that stuff. And so now he's not in the military. He got his bachelor's degree paid for by the military, and he's over in Vietnam as a civilian. And believe me, civilians in places like that get treated way better than the military. Anyways, so he's over in Vietnam, and he meets a friend that was in his class in university, and this guy's an intelligence officer. And they go out to lunch or something, I don't know. But anyways, they're talking. And he says to him, so you're in military intelligence. Do you actually go and get intelligence that the enemy's going to invade some area, or there's going to be some action going on or anything like that? And the intelligence officer says, oh yeah, we get that sometimes. Anyways, so this intelligence officer tells him that what he does most of the time is he goes and gets people that won't fight and get some jobs behind the line as a cook. And so there's your answer. You can tell him, I'm not going to fight. I don't care what you say. And they'll get you a job behind the line somewhere safe as a cook. It's up to you, okay? But if you go out there and get yourself in the position that you get your arms and legs blown off, you know, you volunteered. That's all I can say. Anyways, that's the end of this one. I hope you like it. Spread the word. You know, there's no reason why people should be leaving the country because they don't want to go in the draft or the Selective Service or any of that stuff. There's absolutely no reason. If you want to join up, knock yourself out. Have at her. Have a great day. I wish you all the best luck, you know, quite frankly, and I hope you don't come back in pine boxes. But, you know, unfortunately, it's a reality that many of you are. And so, you know, I don't know what to say. I hope my son doesn't come back in a pine box, but it's out of my control. Anyways, thanks for watching, and spread the word. Spread it around. Have a great day.